All of China's massive new developments and infrastructure require space, which means residents are sometimes forced to move in order to make room for new projects. Some people refuse to leave their homes, however, often because they consider the compensation they've been offered too low. In China, these buildings that are left standing alone as development progresses around them are called nail houses, since they stick out like a nail that can't be hammered down. Land seizures in the name of development are commonplace in today's China, as are demonstrations, often violent against those seizures. In many cases, outside the media spotlight, property developers and local authorities have hired thugs to enforce their will. Today we'll take a look at a selection of nail houses that have been photographed over the past decade. The owner of this 6th-floor villa refused to accept the compensation offered by the developer who plans to build a financial center on the site. An old residential building is surrounded by a newly built ring viaduct in Guangzhou. This nail house sits in the middle of a road under construction in the Guangxi Autonomous Region. This nail house became notable after it ended up in the middle of a new road in Wenling. The elderly couple had refused to sell the property for the price offered by the government since 2001. Eventually, a major 2-lane road to a new train station was constructed around the house. Pictures of the home went viral on the internet and were widely published by Chinese media. The property was demolished in December 2012 after the owners accepted a compensation offer worth $41,000.
国家用尽我地，我就要拆掉啊！怎么办？我就是3岁这里呀，我头给他崴掉也可以呀，给他落掉都可以呀。你给我26万，我89万，哪里26万找到这么2间房子啊？你对吧？
The owner of this nail house in Haifei lights firecrackers to celebrate the Chinese New Year. A bulldozer used to demolish nearby building sites ominously close. The last house in this area of Guangzhou stands in the middle of a construction site where an apartment complex will be built. A partially demolished nail house sits on a construction site in the Anhui province while the owner seeks more compensation. According to local media, the brothers who own this house did not reach an agreement about how to allocate the government compensation, so they haven't signed a relocation agreement. The last house in this area stands in front of a shopping mall in central China's Henan province. The owners of the house filed but lost a lawsuit against the developer of the land, which will be used for a high-rise apartment project. When this photo was taken, the owner of the building had been living without electricity or water for 6 months, according to local media. This nail house is surrounded by a ditch at a construction site for a new residential compound in the Huaibei province. This nail house is at a construction site being developed for apartment blocks. The banner reads, strongly requesting the government to punish the developer who demolished my house. Give back my home. A woman walks past a nail house on the outskirts of Nanjing, where the land will be used for a wetland project. The construction site where this house sits, in the Chongqing municipality, will be developed as a new zone of apartments. This owner collects water near his partially demolished nail house in the Yunnan province. Local media reported water and electricity supplies had been cut. This picture, taken on March 13, 2013, shows a worker looking out over a rubble-filled construction site where 75-year-old Yao's house still stands. This Chinese farmer poses with a copy of China's property law on his farmland in front of his house on the outskirts of Wuhan. Yang uses improvised cannons, which are made out of a wheelbarrow, pipes, and fire rockets, to defend his fields against property developers who want his land. The owner of this small house refused compensation from the real estate developer in charge of building a highway to demolish her house. For 10 years, they tried to change her mind without success. The authorities therefore authorized enclosing the house in the middle of the tracks. According to a local TV station, the house is 40 square meters and is now in the middle of a 2-lane road. The owner, a woman named Liang, said she didn't want to move because the government hadn't offered her a replacement home in a great location. She was offered 2 flats in replacement but refused and had demanded the government to give her 4 flats. Media reports say that Ms. Liang was the only person out of 47 families and 7 companies to refuse compensation and relocation. Authorities said she had been offered several houses as well as monetary compensation, but rejected them all. on a mound above ground level because the developer dug out the land around it. A 3-story nail house with the Chinese national flag on its rooftop is seen in the middle of a newly built road in the Henan province. This nail house once stood in the middle of this road, but it is in the process of being demolished and removed. Residents of Shanghai have collectively decided not to leave their homes, creating an entire nail neighborhood. Tao sits in front of his 2-story home there, which is now surrounded by high-end condominium buildings. A number of high-profile nail houses have received widespread attention in the Chinese press. In one case in 2007, one family among 280 others, at the location of a 6-story shopping mall under construction, refused for 2 years to vacate a home their family had inhabited for 3 generations. Developers cut their power and water and evacuated a 10-meter wide pit around their home. The owners then broke into the construction site, reoccupied it, and flew a Chinese flag on top. Yang Wu, a local martial arts champion, used nunchucks to make a staircase to their house and threatened to beat any authorities who attempted to evict him. His wife planned to open a restaurant at the home's ground floor, granted interviews and frequent press releases to generate publicity. The owners turned down an offer of $450,000, but eventually settled with the developers in 2007. In the People's Republic of China, during most of the communist era, private ownership of real property was abolished. The central government officially owned all real estate, and could in theory dictate who was entitled to control any piece of property according to national interests. Private citizens therefore did not have a legal right to keep their property if the government decided they should leave. With a strengthening economy and the rise of free markets beginning in the late 1990s, private developers began building shopping malls, hotels, and other private developments in densely populated urban centers, which required displacing residents who lived on the land. Developers would typically offer relatively low compensation to the residents, reflecting the pre-development value of their properties or the cost of obtaining alternative housing elsewhere. Should residents resist or try to take advantage of their bargaining position, powerful developers could persuade local authorities and courts to order residents off the land. In other cases, residents would be arrested on false charges, or thugs would be hired to scare away the residents.
Li Huanjun is a 30-something mother of 1 who is now homeless. Her house near Beijing demolished to make way for a new development last summer. She says community leaders sold their property without the consent of residents. This was video she shot the day a security team came in to remove those who tried to stay in their homes. Lee and some of her neighbors threatened to set themselves on fire rather than leave. But the men came at them with fire extinguishers, and in such numbers they couldn't resist. The demolition went ahead.
In March 2007, China passed its first modern private property law. The law prohibits government taking of land except when it's in the public interest. The law strengthened the position of nail house owners, but did not entirely resolve the issue.